So let's start off with 50. Let's say 70. Yeah, that's pretty good. Maybe 90. That's overkill. So let's try 70. This needs to be rotated. It's already good. Scale it a bit more. Okay, looking good. Maybe just a bit more. Something like that. So let's go back in the video. Yeah.
On April the 2nd, 2016, Blue Origin, the private space company, conducted one of their test flights with their new Shepard vehicle. It boosts straight up, then releases the crew-rated capsule on top of it, and the booster then falls down towards the Earth and propulsively lands itself on the landing pad, which is very cool to actually see. There was a camera mounted under the upper skirt and it shot some beautiful panoramas of the curve of the Earth. And while it was descending all the way to the landing pad, you could actually see that this curve, it didn't decrease, did it? It actually stayed like curved. So obviously this is not the curve of the Earth that we are seeing here. This is the result of a fisheye lens. We also call it a radial distortion. And this is something that a lot of people actually observed and noticed and even pointed out. NoDonK on YouTube, for example, he even made a video where he tried to defish this effect. Unfortunately, in his over-enthusiasm to defish it, he drew some conclusions that aren't exactly true. Like, for example, that the Earth might be flat.
To begin, imagine an empty space with a lot of dots arranged in 3 concentric circles. To scale the entire scene uniformly, let's say we want to make it bigger, we simply push all the dots outwards from the center while maintaining their relative positions. However, it's crucial to ensure that the proportions remain intact. For example, if we want to upscale the scene by 20%, we increase the distance from the center to each dot by 20%, and this results in a larger image that will look the same, but bigger. Notably, the dots in the outer circle have been pushed further away from the center to equal this 20% increase. This rectangle here crosses several points from all circles, and after rescaling, we see this rectangle still crosses all of the marked dots. No distortion present. Now what happens if we scale the 3 circles differently? Let's say we upscale the inner circle more than the others. In this case, the previously marked rectangle that crosses dots in all 3 circles will no longer fit. Instead, it will appear distorted, resembling the shape of a barrel. This phenomenon is known as barrel distortion and is often observed in wide-angle lenses. Conversely, if we upscale the outer circle more than the inner circle, a different type of distortion emerges. This is called pincushion distortion, and it causes the marked rectangle to take on a shape similar to that of a stuffed pillow. However, despite the differences in these distortion types, one common factor persists. Every dot is either pushed outwards or pulled inwards along a radius that connects it with the center of the frame. This is why these distortions are also referred to as radial distortions. The term radial signifies the direction along the radii. It's important to note that all radial lenses have a related property, and that is that lines that are straight in 3D space will be depicted straight when going through the center of the lens. This property is particularly useful when analyzing the straightness of the horizon during high-altitude balloon flights, for example. So, since lenses will distort the curve of the horizon due to the lens's inherent characteristics, it's essential to wait for the horizon to cross the center of the frame, where the distortion has less influence to accurately assess the curvature. Let's consider Blue Origin's footage again. Due to the spacecraft's stability requirements, the camera obviously did not tumble around, allowing us to observe the horizon in the central frame. Consequently, our previously demonstrated trick for assessing straightness won't work in this case. Instead, we need to undistort the footage, which involves moving pixels closer to or further away from the center, depending on the lens type and the captured mode used. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a type of camera used by Blue Origin. GH2 probably stands for gaseous hydrogen, and not for GoPro Hero 2. So maybe you are wondering how NoDonK corrected for the distortion. Let's examine his work and compare the distorted and undistorted footage. While NoDonk's defishing attempts may initially seem decent, a closer look reveals some issues. The aspect ratio or format of the video has changed from the standard 3:4 to a more widescreen format without a valid reason. It looks more dramatic and cinematic surely, but it means something fishy is going on. Furthermore, the center of the image has slightly shifted position, which shouldn't occur during defishing. The most significant issue is the noticeable deviation from the expected pattern. Instead of moving in a radial fashion, the recognizable points appear disarrayed and fail to follow the radii of the lens. This discrepancy provides clear evidence that NoDonK did not adhere to the proper rules of defishing. So how did he do it? In his video, NoDonK mentions a program called PF-Track, which can automatically detect lens distortions and track the camera's 3D position. Clever, but a bit of an expensive move. However, due to the rocket occupying nearly half the screen and moving along with the camera, this stationary environment likely affected the program's calculations, leading to inaccurate results. Is this what happened with his corrections? I can't say for sure, of course, and forgive me to not buy the program just to test it. To correctly remove radial distortion, one must employ software that moves pixels along the radii of the lens following a known profile. Since we don't know the distortion profile of the used camera, we need to guess. I sold GoPros for a living for about 7 years, and although I believe that Blue Origin is perfectly capable of developing their own equipment in-house, the resemblance to typical GoPro distortions is present. So I'll be using the GoPro plugin for Adobe Premiere and After Effects. In the last couple of frames of the original video, the mountain range in the background is sharply visible. And since we know the location of the camera and height of the camera, we can use Peak Finder, an online application to render the expected and undistorted panorama. Make sure you are in perspective mode if you try this at home. You can easily pan around and mimic the direction the camera was pointing at. And then, that tedious task begins where we tweak the defishing value and then move the panorama around, tweak the value a bit more, move it around again, maybe rotate a bit, up until the point that we find a perfect match. It took me about 15 minutes to be entirely confident I got it right. A value of 17 in our GoPro lens correction plugin seems to be the perfect match. Also, it seems that the camera needs to be rotated about 1.2 degrees counterclockwise. But if we have a look at NoDonk's result on the other hand, we simply can't match the expected panorama with his creation. In fact, upon closer inspection, his horizon is hollow. And the absolute bizarre thing is that he actually tried a similar technique by comparing those mountains with a shot by a different rectilinear camera, not noticing how awfully off he is. Yes, those mountains, they look like the panorama prediction, as we expect, but his defishing result most definitely does not. Note that my correction happens radial, to counter a radial distortion, as it's supposed to happen. Since his video is already 2 years available on the internet, and since I'm not the only one that knows how to properly defish your footage, he already got some people pointing out his mistakes. And this was his response.
A guy gave me a message on the YouTube chat. They talked to me, my lens correction is bullshit. That's not true. We see in the middle the original Blue Origin footage, with the nicely true artificial earth curvature. And this is their lens correction. This is my footage, and they named it Modified and Manipulated.
As you can see, the provided correction looks very similar to mine.
We can clearly see this is the launch pad from the Blue Origin. You see with the clear eye, this is a perfect round, undistorted circle. Here is not so good, but this is completely awful. This is, oh, yeah, look at that, yeah. And this curve here is absolutely oval. That's the first thing. Yeah, it's clear to see. There's no doubt. Yeah, it's an oval curved launch pad. Yeah.
So his main argument seems to be that the shape of the landing pad in the undistorted render looks unnatural. We need to remember though that we're dealing with a wide angle view, meaning that we have, well, an unnatural field of view, and that gives us circles that look weird due to unfamiliar amount of perspective. When we play around with Blender and import the terrain elevation and imagery and mimic our rocket landing, we can easily see that even with a rectilinear lens, perspective makes this circle look weird. You can actually even do this on your phone. Grab a dinner plate or another circular object and film it on your widest field of view settings. And voila, there you have it, the very unnatural bending of a circle.
So what do you think? Did NoDonK correctly remove the distortion present in the original footage? Or did he, by accident or on purpose, overdid the defishing job until he got like this straight horizon? He doesn't even call it a defishing, so I'm not really sure what he was aiming for. Did he do it on purpose? Just to, I don't know, fool the masses? Well, I think not. I think that by accident his program spilled out a straight horizon, and since that comported with his beliefs, he just went with the result. And yes, he tried to test it, but he didn't even realize that the results from his test were actually showing that he did it wrong. In the end, well, yes, the landing pad looked weird, but if you don't understand perspective properly with wide-angle views, I believe that that could be the reason why he was happy with the result too. I'm not really sure, and we will probably never know. And that's the sad thing about all of this, I believe. You will never know if people are sincere or lying. You can only know that about yourself, I guess. I want to know what you think, so feel free to leave anything in the comment section. I will probably read everything and maybe reply if you ask some questions or something. Until then, take care, my fellow apes. Bye-bye.